Ming-Ming fluffed her wings as she yawned. It had been quite a long day for the team, and she was quite ready for bed. Since returning, Lenny had drifted off to sleep, but the young duckling could hear her turtle friend Tuck still scuttling around within his cage. Ming-Ming blinked through the darkness into the turtle's cage. He seemed to be pushing himself on and off of something. "Tuck?" Ming-Ming whispered into the darkness. She could hear him audibly freeze at the sound of his name. "Tuck, are you okay?" she whispered again. Yeah," Tuck muttered hesitantly. Without further questioning, Ming-Ming picked the lock from her cage and flew out, flapping over to her friend's enclosure. She slipped into the cage and waddled over to him. "Ming-Ming," Tuck gasped as she entered. There's nothing wrong, but please leave." The duckling cocked her head in confusion as she waddled closer to her friend. The closer she approached, the more apparent it became that Tuck was propped onto some sort of toy. She tottered around to his other side and noticed something long, red, and throbbing, protruding from her friend's lower half. "Tuck, are you okay?" she gasped. "Did something happen? Does it hurt?" Tuck's face grew hot as Ming-Ming pushed on. No, Ming-Ming, this is a very natural thing." Ming-Ming looked at him, very confused. "Do you know what mating is?" Tuck asked quietly. Ming-Ming shook her head. "Oh, well," Tuck trailed off as he proceeded to explain the process of mating and reproduction. All the while his throbbing turtle boner stuck out. By the end of his explanation, Ming-Ming felt very flustered, but the more she stared at her friend's raging turtle erection, the more she felt a sort of heat rise within herself. By Tuck's explanation, it did seem that the three of them were all nearing an age of maturity. "I didn't really understand. Could you give me a demonstration?" Ming-Ming asked timidly. Tuck felt the heat rise within himself at Ming-Ming's request. Well, if you really want to," he answered, pushing himself off the toy he had been humping earlier. "What should I do?" the duckling asked. "Well, put your chest to the ground and stick your rump in the air," he suggested. Ming-Ming nodded and did as he said, wiggling her butt a bit as she settled herself. Tuck crawled over to her, pulling his upper body onto her. "Am I hurting you?" he asked. Ming-Ming shook her head in response. The turtle continued to pull himself onto her until he felt his cock come in contact with the hole beneath her tail feathers. Without another word, he pushed himself onto the duckling beneath him. Ming-Ming gasped quietly, trying to keep herself from disturbing Lenny. She pushed her beak into the mulch beneath her, her breathing heavy as the turtle's penis penetrated her. Tuck thrust in and out slowly, not wanting to injure her. "Please, harder, Tuck," the duckling begged. Tuck nodded and began fucking her harder and faster, his dick just wanting its release now. The duckling's hole was tight around his turtle dick, and he found it hard to go as fast as she seemed to want it, but he persisted, at this point giving no thought to the guinea pig in the other cage. Tuck could no longer hold it in and released into the duck, collapsing on top of her as he could no longer hold himself up. Ming-Ming, feeling a sensation within her, pushed onto the turtle's cock, wanting to let whatever this feeling was out. She gasped as this new sensation swept over her. This was nothing she had ever felt before, and she enjoyed it. Ming-Ming pulled away from Tuck, wincing a little as his penis came out of her. "I'd like to do that again," she nuzzled her friend. He gave an exhausted nod as a response and closed his eyes. The duckling chuckled and slipped out of the cage, returning to her own, before laying down and finally getting her well-deserved sleep.